Good afternoon. Welcome to HKDI Inspire Prototyping the Future 2022. In our fourth series of HKDI Inspire program, this year we focus on technological innovation, its impact on the creative industries, and how it is shaping our world now and future. Today, we are honored to have invited an expert in Ars Technology, Gerfried Stocker, Artistic and Managing Director of Ars Electronica in Austria, to speak for us. If you are tech savvy, you should know Ars Electronica very well for its annual festival, as well as innovations including artificial intelligence, which have been evolving the digital world of arts. After Jeffrey's lecture, there will be a panel discussion moderated by Terence Wong, Head of Department of Digital Media of HKDI. The discussion will be open to the floor, and please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A session of the Zoom video webinar. Without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Jeffrey. Jeffrey, over to you.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me and see me. It's always a little hassle with this Zoom technologies to make sure it's working, but it seems to work. At least I don't hear any protest. So let's give it a try and also start my Okay. You should be able to see my screen right now. I hope this is working because I don't get any feedback, but probably it's working. Otherwise, somebody would tell me that it's not working. I just need to make sure that also my sound is working. So please let me try it again. And here we are now with sound. So, well, thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to give you a little overview of what we are doing here at Ars Electronica and talk to you and discuss with you about some of the interesting aspects of future and innovation. Let's start to go back a little bit into history, because this is what is, I think, always the most interesting thing when we talk about the future, to also look back in history. And Ars Electronica, the organization that I'm heading, is actually quite a traditional organization. Also, it's focused on the area of technology, of digital technology. It is running since 1979. So it was actually more than 40 years ago that the first festival, Ars Electronica, was taking place here in the city of Linz in Austria. I will go a little bit back into these early years just to give the context. For the overview, the festival is just one of the big things that we are doing every year. There is another very important event that is actually just ahead of us this year, the Ars Electronica, our international competition for cyber arts. This is the actually largest prize award competition for digital art, for computer art. And we have received, for example, this year, a little bit more than 3,500 submissions. So it's really large scale, and it's international submissions are coming from around 95 to 100 countries every year. In addition to these two areas that are very much focused on art and experimentation, we have also the Ars Electronica Center, which is an educational institution. So it's not just like a museum for the digital art of the festival and the Ars Electronica, but additional element in this range of activities of Ars Electronica that is specifically focusing on education, on training and information, with a large focus, of course, for the regional and local audiences. But of course, if you want to be an active player, a driving force in this area of innovation, and in particular when it comes to new types of art, design and creativity, it's not enough that you are just presenting stuff. You need your own infrastructure to be able to produce, to do research, to do development. And this is why we also have our Ars Electronica Future Lab, which is a professional laboratory with about 35 to 40 full-time employees, ranging, of course, from many artists, designers, creators, engineers, software developers, people from very different areas and disciplines, and also very international team that is working here. And the Future Lab is creating many of the interesting projects and installations for our own exhibitions, but also working, of course, with artists, supporting artists in residence, and also working with industry, with companies from Austria, but from all over Europe, as well as internationally. In particular, we have a very strong relationship to many companies in Japan, where the Future Lab is working. Ars Electronica Export is another activity that is quite important for us, because it's also another opportunity for us to earn some money that we need, of course, to run our artistic and educational activities. And Ars Electronica Solutions is a spin-off of the Future Lab, which grew quite strong until 2012. So we had the need to split up the Future Lab between Future Lab and Solutions. So Future Lab is the research and development department, and Solutions is the department that is creating and producing applications of these creative ideas from the world of Ars Electronica for customers and for the market. And as I have mentioned, Ars Electronica Japan is meanwhile also a own department in Ars Electronica, because it has been growing quite strongly in recent years. So this is just a little overview, and I think it's important to see the very diversity. So to be at the same time an institution for art, but also for education, as well as for research and development. And I think this interdisciplinarity is, of course, the most important paradigm of our time. We need to bring together the expertise of people from all the different types of areas of activities. Only with this broad approach, we think we can be really strong in utilizing the opportunities of new technologies. So let's go back to the very early beginning of Ars Electronica, 1979. I assume most of the audience is students, so most likely you all were not already on the planet at this time when Ars Electronica started. But when you see this one sentence that was the opening statement in 1979, we see that many things are still very much the same. It's really interesting. I mean, they wrote the sentence saying, with electronics, a progressive element has come into our world whose influence is not limited to industry and research, but extends to all areas of life. A development has thus been set in motion that opens up astonishing and fantastic aspects. And I think we only have to change this second word, electronics. Electronics sounds quite old-fashioned nowadays, but if we would say here with artificial intelligence, for example, then the sentence and this whole idea that there is a technology that is driving change and impact beyond industry, beyond just being a technology of tool and a technology for working, but being a driving force for changes in society and culture, that this is still, I think, the most important thing that we are concerned. This technology has become such a strong driving force that it's, as we know, really covering all areas of our life. But what they understood at this time was not only this importance of this new technology, but also the importance of seeing this technology and the impact of this technology in the context with society. And I think this is still up to date one of the really, really very important issues. And quite often we are not aware enough how important it is to see the technological development in context, in connection with its social implications. And this is, of course, difficult, because how can you find paradigms? How can you envision how technology is changing the behavior of people? In particular, when it's technology like the digital technologies that are so strongly connected with communication, that are per se communication technologies. And in a time, and you see this in these little movies here, in these little videos, at this time, the technology was, of course, incredibly crude and simple, and things that we wouldn't even consider to be interesting anymore were, of course, totally exciting for people and for artists as well at this time. And the important part is that it doesn't matter so much, how it evolved, how advanced your technology is. But with the sensitivity, with the notion, the expertise of art, you can create a better understanding. You can find a better understanding of these transformational forces that technology has on to society. And this idea that we utilize art as a way to understand transformations and also to be better able to drive, to shape, to create transformations. This is something that has been, of course, in the years since then become very popular. You all definitely know about design thinking, a very strong and powerful tool to find new directions, to find solutions for problems. But meanwhile, since some years already, more and more people are also talking about art thinking. While design thinking is a wonderful way to narrow down towards a solution for a problem, art thinking has become a wonderful tool, and there are many consulting companies now also all over the world who are practicing, also, of course, in very different ways, this idea of art thinking as a way to open up our perspectives. And I think this is the second important thing. The first important thing that I mentioned is joining forces, bringing people from all areas of expertise and experts together. The second important thing is to be able to open up yourself, your mind, your ideas, your possibilities, to really look into different directions, to find new directions. And of course, art, in particular, digital art and media art, is wonderful. When you look at these images here from recent festivals, you see so many inspirations. You see all this wonderful variety of new and creative ideas, how to deal with new possibilities, how to utilize them, how to apply them. And you see also that a festival, of course, is a wonderful way to really mingle with all these creative people, with experts and the audience. And what we have to see, of course, is that the digital age is, of course, also an age of participation, not only interaction, but an age of participation. I think this is a very important challenge for designers to come, is really to understand this next level from pure interaction to engagement and participation. And this addresses, of course, a very big issue that is of great concern for Ars Electronica, and I think many other cultural initiatives and institutions worldwide. And this is, of course, the question of accessibility. So we talked about the importance, the world of the experts that we want to bring together, the opening up the mind of the professionals in all these areas. But we also need, of course, to really look at the people. If we are not able to bring along everybody into this new digital world, into this world of innovation, into this excitement that we often feel when we talk about innovation, then it won't work. It is a growing problem all over the world that the social as well as technological gap is widening. So equally education as well as, of course, support systems are very important to really make sure that this technology is benefiting everybody. And this is exactly what we are doing in particular with the Ars Electronica Center. Here you see some photos from our exhibitions. We have, of course, a lot of really cool technology where we are able to present very interesting and new artistic work. I will talk a little bit more about this. For example, just a few days ago, we had a wonderful concert where live music was being visualized in real time. This is just a few moments of one of these concerts that we had recently. But the wonderful thing with digital technology is that it's so versatile. You can use the same infrastructure that you use for exciting artistic productions. For example, again, here for educational and scientific purposes. In the same wonderful projection space, we can do this high-end anatomic visualizations, which led actually to the situation that our deep space, as we call this special projection space with 8K resolution and stereoscopic imaging, became the official lecture hall for the medical university in the city of Linz, because here we are able to show not only the standard model of human anatomy, but real cases, real situations of human being, pathological cases from the hospital. It takes about just a few minutes from the moment when you put the patient into a MRI or a CT scan to getting these quality images, not only for education, but of course also for medical analysis. This program was so successful that the medical university decided to install such a facility in their new campus that was just opened half a year ago. Education is, of course, something that connects with culture. This is gigapixel photography that allows to look at cultural heritage in a quality as it just wasn't imaginable before. You can visit, of course, 3D stereoscopic models of all the important buildings and architectural sites all over the planet. Again, another wonderful example of showing some of the masterpieces of Western painting from a few hundred years ago. But of course, also it is a great space again for interaction. So we do a lot of development also together with the students from the local universities for interactive gaming scenarios where, of course, the most important thing is social interaction. And I think we have here definitely a field where much more research development and creativity is needed in the coming years to really understand that this interactivity, these interactive technologies should not only be used to seduce individual users to become good consumers and buy and purchase more of the equipment, but really to utilize it to create interaction, communication, and engagement among people. So again, this social aspect of technology is extremely important, and it has to go, of course, much beyond what we are calling social media right now. And I think this is definitely one of the challenges for designers of the future. Again, here are a few photos from our festival where you see the different type of people. It's a very social event. We have huge concerts, and one of the nice projects that we are doing is that every year the big symphony orchestra of our city is participating in the Ars Electronica Festival. And at this occasion, we did, for example, projects like this. I will show a little bit more of this, where we had a robot in the middle of the orchestra dancing to the music of the orchestra. But of course, there is all this wonderful variety of digital contemporary music. Again, visualizations of classical music. And of course, every festival is a treasure trove of inspiring, mind-blowing, crazy, fantastic ideas. So one of the best possibilities, of course, not only for the artists and the experts, but again, for the audiences to get inspired and also to get engaged. And here is a little video that shows this project I mentioned before that we did with the orchestra. And here you see this huge industrial robot that was standing in the middle of the musicians. And the robot, so to say, was able to listen to the music and respond with its movement directly to the music. So it's actually dancing in real time to the sound, to the music of the orchestra. And of course, bringing these things together, creating these bridges between traditional culture, in this case, classical music from Hector Berlioz and the symphony orchestra, with the new technologies, is also a very important symbolic work, because we need to understand, I think, in our way of creating innovations, that we have to make sure that our innovations are always rooted to the experience of people, to the life of people. And this is, of course, what is perfectly expressed in culture, whether it's the traditional culture or the contemporary lifestyles. There is a great array of wonderful works. You might know about this project from Benas Faradi. I think it's just a perfect example how interesting combinations of design, fashion, and advanced technology can not only create a great example of potential future products. And I mean, I'm totally sure that in the future we will have intelligent clothes. I mean, we have some examples right now already. They are still very prototypic and mostly coming from artists and designers like Benas Faradi here. But of course, the idea that this technology is going to enhance not only our cars, our offices, our machinery, but our fashion, our bodies is of course very clear. And all these applications of this new technology, of course, immediately bring up new concerns, bring up new topics that we also have to be critical aware. And I think this is what this project is so nicely showing. I mean, it's great. You have this dress and it's responding to the gaze of the person that is in front of you. But of course, at the same time, we recognize, oh, there is a camera. The camera can be connected to some recording device. It can be connected to the cloud, to the internet. So immediately it becomes also an issue, of course, of privacy and surveillance. And we have to be aware that information technology, data technology, digital technology is, of course, always also as surveillance technology. I mean, this is why digital technology is so powerful. This is why information and data technology is so powerful, because it can handle data in a massive amount in very short time, and it can make it accessible. It can analyze the data. So whenever we are connecting with the digital world, of course, we have to be aware that these issues of privacy and surveillance are an important part. But I think more and more we also have to look beyond the digital horizon. And one of the interesting things, of course, is the field of biotechnology and genetic engineering. And there is a lot of super interesting artists out there that we are awarding every year with our special prizes at our international award competition that I was talking about. This is a great example. Etsuko Yakushimaru, a very popular and very successful Japanese musician, composer, singer, and musician. She made a few years ago this project where she recorded one of her songs into DNA. And then this DNA was used to alter bacteria. And the music is now living in this bacteria. And of course, it is changing with the bacteria. So it's a very interesting also question, or a project that is putting up very interesting questions, of course, of the role of biotechnology and genetic engineering, and also, of course, addressing again questions: how far do we want to go with technology? I mean, when we are starting to change living organisms, of course, we are automatically addressing a lot of ethical concerns. Again, good examples of design, art, and technology coming together, developing new types of prostheses, new types of fashion. You probably know this project. It has become very famous in the Netherlands, a bridge, a 3D printed bridge that is actually now being built and set up in the city of Amsterdam. And this is a project I wanted to show you a little bit more in detail. I think really a great example of ingenuity, design, art, and all the high tech that we can think of. So it's a very simple idea, actually. If you once know how to do it, it's simple, but of course, it's also a very elaborated idea. So the whole thing is about to build a structure that is strong as if it would be a concrete structure, but building it without any concrete, any glue or anything like this. It's only possible with advanced machine learning technologies and robotics. And what the thing is doing, the computer is calculating a very special pattern for this little rope And the rope is really, this is an ordinary rope that you can purchase in every store. There is nothing special with the rope itself. The special thing is the pattern, and the robot is now laying out this pattern on the ground. And in the next step, you will see, let's just jump a little bit forward so we see more of this pattern. And now comes the next thing. So here's the layer of gravel, of stones. Again, the stones are just pure ordinary stones. And you see now there is the next layer of pattern from this rope. And the simple trick, so to say, is because of the weight of the stones, the rope is creating an adhesion between the stones. So the rope becomes the binding element between the layer of stones. You don't need any concrete for this or anything else. And you see, you can build really strong, big scale structures. And only where the robot was laying out this pattern with the ropes, these areas are now very strong. They really stick together. The rest of it is just loose. And this is what remains. And you might remember the patterns that you have seen laid out by the robot. So this is how the sculpture, the structure looks right after this process. And it's very stable and very durable. And the nice thing with this is if you want to get rid of it, you don't have to do a lot of heavy machinery. The only thing you need to do is now pulling back the rope from the structure, and layer by layer you can dismantle this very stable structure that is a few tons heavy. So really serious stuff for the future of building constructions, houses, maybe even bridges or something like this, without any big problem to dismantle it. So very interesting, sustainable way. And this is a project, you might know it, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but I think that's really a very good example of how all the different areas of expertise are coming together to really go and develop new directions. Again, another piece from the world of biotechnology, genetic engineering. This beautiful gown, this dress that you see here, illuminating on its own, is created by from silk that has been produced by genetically modified silkworms. So the silkworms have been genetically modified so that when they produce the silk, they are also, the silk has this fluorescent protein in the silk itself. So you create a completely new type of natural material. And of course, immediately the question is being raised here also very often by the audiences when we show this project, whether it is ethically and morally okay to modify animals, silkworms, just for, so to say, the sake of getting a new type of material. And I think whenever we work in this field of art and technology, we are, of course, addressing ethical questions. And I think an important part that we had to learn, and still I think have to learn, is to really see digital not just as the next level of our industrial technologies, but really something as a new ontological state or state of aggregation of information. When we digitize things, when information becomes digital, it's almost like when you change, for example, water between being ice and solid, between liquid or being a steam. It's always water, of course. It's the same element, but of course the laws of nature apply very differently to ice than to water. And on ice, if you want to move on ice, you need to learn skating. if you want to move on the liquid state of water, you need to learn swimming. And this might sound a little bit like a banal example, but this is basically what we always have to do. We have to learn to move in a different way, to move, to live, to act in a different way in the world of digital data. And I think, again, when we think about innovation, it's not so much the interesting thing is what is the next step of some digital gadgets and devices, the next generation of computers, faster, more memory, or this kind of things. But the real innovation is when we find out new ways how to act, to move, to live in this digital state of aggregation of our world. It's really, and we see this when we look at the great examples that have been also commercially successful in the last 10, 20, 30 years. It always have been ideas developed by people who were able to find out, to understand, and to find out new ways to act, to live, to work, to move in and with this digital data. And this has been difficult enough so far, as we all know. And now we have this game changer of artificial intelligence. And I think this needs some considerations. I mean, game changer should be actually said here in quotes. It's a term for artificial intelligence technology that is used very often, and we should be very careful with it because, of course, whenever we talk about artificial intelligence technology, we need to be aware that there is no artificial intelligence. Everything we have is very smart, very elaborated statistics, pattern recognition, technology that can do number crunching in super high speed and extremely big amount of data. But just because a system is able to do things very fast and with a huge amount of data, this doesn't create intelligence at all, at least not intelligence in the way as we think about when we talk about intelligence from the human perspective. It might have something to do with intelligence in terms of how, as the English word is also referring to this kind of special analysis and investigation behind it. But intelligence in terms of cognition, of being able to think and anticipate like humans or like many animals are doing, this is not happening. Nevertheless, it was, of course, a very, very successful idea to revive the term artificial intelligence. As you all know, it's a term that comes from the 1950s. And for many decades, it has been only an issue for scientists and for computer nerds. But now in the last 5 years, in a period of time where digital technology really became lifestyle, became fashionable, became part of everyday's life, artificial intelligence became like the new word for everything that is advanced digital technology. Most of the people, when they talk about artificial intelligence, don't even really spend much time to consider what is really the difference between advanced digital technology and advanced machine learning. Because machine learning would be, of course, the much better and correct term to talk about this. But nevertheless, even if we are far away from something that would be this kind of general strong artificial intelligence that really could be considered as something that has an independent, autonomous way of thinking and acting, we are already in this process of changing into a new paradigm of technology. And this is the paradigm shift from automatization to autonomization. Automatization is what we did, what we're doing, what we did since more than 100 years, 200 years with the industrialization. industrial technologies are specially coined by or defined by the very idea of automatization. This is how it started with the steam engine, and then all this machinery, the big factories that were automating the process of manufacturing. And basically, until now, also what we are doing with digital technology is still very much in the mindset of automatization. We are looking at things, how can we use the computer to do something more efficient, to do something faster, to do something cheaper. These are the clear paradigms of the industrial age. Making things easier, making things faster, making things cheaper. This is automatization, optimization by automatization. This is how the industrial world has been built. But now with this nevertheless very crude and early technologies of so-called artificial intelligence, we are starting the digitalization of thinking and decision-making. And I think the digitalization of thinking, we can still put a very big question mark. But what we are definitely doing is the digitalization of decision-making. And there's one example that probably everybody of us is using almost every day or several times a day. And this is when you go to Spotify or Apple Music or all these other things or Netflix or whatsoever, recommendation systems. So in this very simple thing, we see already that even if we know that Spotify is not intelligent, or Netflix algorithms or whatever system you use is not intelligent, but we hand over a certain amount of our decisions to the systems. Anytime we follow the recommendations one of the system is giving us, and the same thing is happening in all the social media platforms, and so on and so on. There is so much already decision about taste, about what type of information we are consuming, that is no longer made by people, but made by machines. And I think in this example, we can see already the beginning of this new age of autonomization. And it's, of course, again, creating an impact that is quite interesting, because even these systems are not able yet to be really better composers and to create music. I mean, we will come to this a little bit later about AI and music. So the music is still created by human beings, but the power of the big platforms with their recommendation systems leads already now to a change of behavior and decisions also in the human beings, in the composers. We see more and more, of course, that a certain style of composing that is made successful because of the recommendation systems is now adopted by the composers, by the music producers. So you have some rules that come from actually the impact of the recommendation systems. And if I compose my music like this, it's much more likely that the systems will push it up in the ranking. And in this, we see that, of course, there is a commercial drive that is changing or shifting, that is pushing us to shift decision-making from humans to digital systems. And this, of course, is a simple example. Nobody would really say, okay, give a damn, I can anyway make my own decisions, and I'm fine if sometimes Spotify makes decisions for me. Well, as long as it's just our music, our background music, our popular music, that's fine. But we know that these things are going much, much deeper. These things are changing the way we consume information. These things can change what type of information we get and what type of information we don't get, and so forth. This goes even, we have these examples of such systems being employed already in courtyards, where still at the moment everybody says, oh, well, this is just to recommend something to the judges, but then of course the judge has to make his or her own decision. The same in medical analysis. So It's just to recommend and support the doctor to make the decisions. But we all know how fast these things are going. And from one moment to the next one, we say, oh, well, it's cheaper to let the machine do it, so just cancel the human being. And I think this is an important point, and I will come later a little bit to it, why this is so important. Autonomization is, of course, the word is very interesting because it's a word that comes from auto, the self, and nomos, the law. So what we have started, of course, is a world of technology, where technology is starting to act according to its own laws. And of course, this is still a little bit science fiction. This is still future, but it's a very possible and very likely future. And it puts us, of course, into a very important position of really taking care of what we are doing. And again, I think here art has a very ambiguous way. When we look at this project, for example, let's see the video first. So this video is 8 years old now. It's from 2014, and I'm sure you have seen at least videos from these super spectacular drone shows that we have now at the openings of Olympic Games or big sporting events and things like this. The interesting thing is that this is a technology and a system that has not been invented and developed by Intel or one of the large Chinese drone companies, but actually by a very small group of artists and engineers in our future lab in Ars Electronica and Linz. And drone technology is one of these really interesting things where we see at the same time, of course, the benefits and also the dangers for our society, for our life, and also, of course, the commercial implications. So what does it mean if artists are inventing such kind of technologies? Are they just supporting the technology, or are they also, by addressing these issues, by bringing issues to a broader attention, are they also contributing to at least create a better awareness of what is going on when we apply these technologies? Can art and design be really a serious contribution to make technology not just commercially more successful or cheaper or technologically better, but better for humans? Can art contribute to something that we could call digital humanism, a technology that is developed with one focus, and the focus should be the benefit for humans, for the users? And I think when we again come back to this shift from automatization to autonomization, of course, self-driving vehicles are a wonderful example of all the big challenges that we have ahead of us. And this is another interesting project that was done in our future lab based on the experiences with these flying drones. We collaborated with this big car manufacturer, Mercedes-Benz in Germany. And it was really interesting to see that the engineers and the designers from this super big company, they were always, in all their development, they were mainly concerned to look at what's going on inside the car. What do they have to develop to make it more interesting for the people who drive the car? But it was very difficult for them actually to change the perspective and really look at their developments from this perspective of the person outside of the car. And we did this very interesting project and collaboration here with them, where we developed new communication strategies between human passerbys who are just on the street because, well, that's what they do. They walk around, they are just passerbys. And then one of these robots is coming, this autonomous driving vehicles, how can we establish a communication? And I think this is again a very important point, because it's not just an issue now of design as we were thinking about it in the past, where of course in the history, design was of course about the shape of things. In the world of modern technology, of all the digital gadgets that we have right now, design has become, of course, very much about the functionality of things. So ergonomics as one of the keywords has really become an important issue for designers. But what does this mean for the future that we are, well, that's not ahead of us. We have been entering already this world and this future in quite a strong amount, where we have digital assistants, smart devices, and intelligent systems. In the future, where this will be so much more powerful and so also more pervasive than we have Alexa and Siri right now. I mean, this is just simple early expressions of these possibilities. But a world where we are surrounded with smart or semi-intelligent systems. How do you design for them? How can we already, in the design of the technology, in the design of the shape, in the design of the functionality of these things, how can we integrate the necessary support that people who use this technology can not only use it very efficiently, but also always get informed about what's behind this technology. I think one of the really big problems for people to comprehend is, of course, that behind the things like a smartphone, I mean, the smartphone is not the technology that is relevant. The really important thing is all this huge infrastructure that is behind it, and who controls this infrastructure, who owns this infrastructure, who decides about what's possible in this infrastructure. So design needs to support not only the easy use of technology, but it also needs to support the transparency of technology. It needs to support that users are being able to understand the structure, the meaning, the context behind technology. And I think also in terms of the very simple things, again, how to support the functionality, we need to think about the behavior, the character, the soul of the systems. So this is a completely new challenge for the world of design, because it has much more to do with storytelling, maybe with acting, with theater play and things like this. So probably also as designers of the future, you need to go much more into areas that are beyond the visual cultural things, but really maybe even into psychology. And designers of the future probably need a very strong background in storytelling capacities as well as in psychology. And again, of course, the interesting thing is that this technology is also enabling us with a lot of new forms of creating. I mean, I have been focusing very much here, of course, on the social aspects, the industrial aspects, but machine learning has really enabled a lot of very exciting new tools for creators. And I think in particular in the field of music, we find a lot. This is a very interesting project here that Yamaha did a few years ago. They premiered it in Linz at the festival, where they trained an AI system with all the recordings of the very famous Glenn Gould, the piano player. So that now the AI system can play along with a string quartet in the very way how Glenn Gould would have played himself. And of course, this is a very simple and almost banal example. And immediately it addresses the question, well, this is just imitation. This is simulation. But nevertheless, whether it was laymen or composers and conductors and professionals that were at this event, nobody could pull away from this fascination that suddenly something that we know as something that is so strongly human. I mean, composing music, playing music is of course something that is in the very center of what most of us probably will say this is the definition of being human. This is part of what makes us being human. And then you see a grand piano, this wonderful instrument that is actually a robot. It's the same robot basically that we saw before as industrial robots. It's the same technology, just disguised in a wonderful instrument. And then this music that is so dear to us suddenly is not played by a human person, by a human being anymore, but by an artificial intelligence. And in this moment, of course, we need to address so many questions towards creativity and the impact of art. What is really the important part of art? Is it what is being produced by the artist, by the composer? Or is it actually much more what we hear? Where is the moment when art is happening in music? Is it when the composer has the music in his brain? Is it when he or she writes it on the sheet? Is it when the conductor or the musicians are interpreting it? Or is it happening in the moment when our ears start to vibrate and send all these electrical signals in our brain and suddenly music comes to life? And I think in this question of creativity, we need to see, of course, both sides. And I think that's an interesting way to rethink and redefine also how we look at creativity. And here is now an example of a music that has been completely composed, not by an artificial intelligence, but with the help of artificial intelligence. Systems. Okay, and it's of course totally unfair to interrupt this music. Please go to our website, you find the whole video there. The interesting point here, I think, is that Ali Nikrang, the guy that you see on the piano, he's also the composer of this piece. He is a graduate from the Music Academy in Salzburg, the Mozarteum, where he studied composition and piano. So he's a trained concert pianist. But after he finished Mozarteum in Salzburg, he went also to the Technical University and became a very great computer scientist, in particular in artificial intelligence. So I think he's a wonderful example of how people who are capable of understanding and working with technology have a deep understanding of how the technology really works, can really create out of this not only wonderful pieces of music, but a new way of composing and a new instrument. He has been developing on his own a system that allows him to compose in real-time interaction with the artificial intelligence. So if you ever try to do compositions with Muse or with some of the other tools based on GPT-2 or GPT-3, there is a lot of interesting possibilities out there. Usually is you give some seed and then the computer composes something, you get how many different examples that you want. And this is not very satisfying for a composer, because you don't want to listen to the whole piece that was coming from the computer and then do something with it. You want to understand why the computer proposes some certain parts of the composition and then interact with the decisions of the AI system. And he developed the editor, his own tools, quite easy to use actually for composers, so that composing becomes a real-time interaction between human and the AI. And I think this is one of the, for me, most important examples of what we should be aware of when we talk about the technology or the artificial intelligence. And of course, also me, myself, now in this last hour, I have very often talked about the technology and the artificial intelligence. And when you go to the internet or to any newspaper, even the scientific magazines, and you read about new achievements in AI research, you always read the headlines, AI now achieved to do protein folding much better. AI achieved now to do something. AI can do something. And this is, of course, totally wrong, because it's not AI that achieves something. Not AI can do something. It's always us. We humans can do things better with artificial intelligence. This is why we are developing the systems. This is the big idea, the big dream that we have behind it. And let me finish again with some jump back into history to better understand our future, because these examples are more than 1,000 years ago. Already in the 9th century, in the Islamic world in Baghdad, they were so fascinated by the idea of producing autonomous machines. And actually the first autonomous machine was not the Jacquard looms of the Industrial Revolution in England, as we often have learned in school. It was actually music instruments, automatic music instruments that were developed 1,500 years ago here in this example in Baghdad at the courtyard there, where artists and engineers were working together. And what you see here is actually musical robots. And people were totally inspired by the idea, how wonderful would this be if we have machines that can make music together with us, if machines would be so powerful to be able to make music, if we could be so ingenious, so extraordinary clever as humans to be able to build these machines. And of course, the technology has totally changed in all these hundreds and thousands of years. But the idea between these two images is totally the same. And of course, also the hybris behind it. Because who are we as humans that we think we should be the ones who can create really something that is measuring up to a kind of general, powerful, strong artificial intelligence that sometimes might be more powerful than humans. I'm not so much concerned whether or when it will be possible to have robots and AI that is more powerful than human beings. I'm more concerned that we spend the time until then to prepare ourselves to be able to use the achievements of our science and our technology, to use the achievements of human technology, of human science in a responsible way, so that we are, when we have this technology, that we are applying it in a way that is for the benefit of people and not for negative things that are damaging lives and human beings and things like this. So I think one of the important points when we think about training, education, learning, everything that is necessary to be an innovative creator of the future, it's not only enough to think about possibilities to act. We also need capabilities to act. We need to train our competence, our ability to use the powerful technology that we have at hand in a responsible way. And I hope this is something that can give you some inspirations, and without any further blah blah, I'm going to stop now my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for your inspiring lecture. Now may we have Terence to help moderate the discussion or put forth some questions. Terence, please.
Okay. Jeffrey, nice to meet you again.
Hello.
Yeah. I just saw that AI music development is very nice. Hi. All the audience, you can post any questions you want to ask Jeffrey, and let me talk with you about Ars technology. In Hong Kong, this term become popular in the industry, and in your presentation there is a show. There is robotic arm dancing in the symphony concert. So this kind of performance we also classified as Ars technology show. So how to make this kinds of show performance become more commercial, more popular to general public?
That's an interesting question. Actually, I think there is a very strong trend and development now anyway undergoing, where new creative forms of digital technology getting more and more interesting, becoming more and more interesting for people. So but nevertheless, I think that, you know, when we look at these examples of artistic production, I think their main value is not so much to be itself commercially successful, but to inspire commercial products. I think we just need to be honest and clear that real artistic creative production is usually not so suitable for the mass market. But when we look at all the things that have been commercially successful, especially in the digital world or in this in innovation area, we always find creative and artistic ideas that were there at the beginning, that were building, so to say, the basis for further ideas. So I think what we need is a kind of coexistence between creative research and creative application. I think we have to think of it very much like we do in science. We know there are many scientists in research centers and universities who never produce a commercially successful product. But without their research, no engineer, no business person would be able to develop their commercially viable thing. So I think maybe that's more a European perspective also, but I think we need to make sure that when we think about creativity as a driving force, almost like the raw material, creativity, the new oil of the future, as something is often referred to, then we need to make this difference that creativity is a raw material, yes, okay, but there's a very big difference because creativity has to be constantly nurtured and produced. Creativity is not something like oil or coal where you just dig a hole in the ground and then you exploit it. So we need to think of an ecosystem. And in this ecosystem, we need space for, as we would call it, blue sky research in science, where people are able to be creative and create new ideas. But then we need closely to connect with these creative laboratories, or however we call it. We need to have a close connection where this artistic creative research is being transferred towards business people, towards engineers, towards those people who are good in making business. It doesn't make a lot of sense if you try to train an artist to be a good businessman. Equally, it doesn't make a lot of sense and is not very successful if you try to educate a businessman to become an artist. There is a very good reason why we have the profession of artists and the expertise of artists, and why we have the profession of business people. So I think what's necessary to support this also economic dimension is creating a good communication. And I think that's an important task, of course, of universities and schools like you are doing. I think this is an extremely important point already in the time of education, to bring the creative people together with the business people. But not to convert the one into the other, but really to say, okay, there are two types of expertise, and now let's bring them together and try to create a situation where they can work together in a very sufficient way.
Okay, so another hot topic, and I think around the world, there is a metaverse, and you have I think Ars Electronica is developing your projects with different new technologies and devices, interactive stuff. What kinds of technologies or sensors you think it should be used for metaverse in the future?
Yeah, well, I'm 58 years old, and I'm working in digital technology and digital art since 40 years now. I have seen so many times where this idea of virtual worlds was being hyped, and it never has worked. So I'm very skeptical about the success of the metaverse. And just because Mark Zuckerberg is a very rich person who had been very successful with one idea, doesn't mean that all the money in the world will be able to really bring the idea of the metaverse to success. Because the metaverse, I think there are many reasons why we should be skeptical. Because first of all, why should humans really want to spend a significant amount of time hiding behind some kind of virtual reality device? And even if these devices will become smaller and easier to use, it will take some time. I mean, we don't have yet the technology to make the metaverse really working. As a prototype, it's nice, but it's nice for geeks and nerds who want to be totally immersed in their computer games. But even when we see the examples that Zuckerberg was presenting, I mean, compare the experience of going to a real restaurant with real friends and maybe having this and say, okay, selfie and some short video that you send out there. We have already a very good functioning metaverse that is the combination between quite good functioning technology and good functioning devices and our real world. And I think the metaverse has this very big problem that it tries to almost annihilate the real world. And this is something we should be very skeptical, and definitely we should be skeptical, because if an idea is, if somebody tries to push an idea with so much money and so much power, this is always something to be skeptical about. I think for the metaverse, when you're a young designer and artist, the best thing you can do is really to start to think critically and skeptically about it. And again, not skeptical because we don't want this technology. It's not that we want to get rid of all this stuff. I think the other way, if we want to embrace it, if we want to be able to utilize it and maybe make even commercially successful applications or content for it, we have to dive very deep into it. We have to dig deep, we have to dive deep. And this means also to always make critical analysis, to really think about, okay, what could be nice with it and what could be actually really stupid. And again, I think, I mean, it's already strange enough that we have to talk here on the screens, but imagine if we now also would have to wear one of these stupid things. Do you really want me to talk to you like this? Hello. So what I mean with this is that for the metaverse, the important thing is not so much technology again, because the technology that would really make this fly is too far away. We cannot expect that within the next 5 years we will have glasses like this, easy like this, and 4K stereoscopic, see-through, and voice controlled, and all the things together. I mean, this is just, it will take more time. Okay, so what
there are two questions in the chat room. So,
well, what do you think about the computer generative art that is being sold? About the art, I think very highly. I mean, of course, when you go to OpenSea, you find so much bullshit that is just unbearable, how much bad graphic design and bad computer design is there. But that's life. I mean, this is, I don't care about this. I mean, if people are happy to make simple drawings, everybody should be able to work creatively. And there is a lot of really good stuff there as well. And I think that the very good thing is that for the first time, these things like really generative art, artists who have been very seriously working on a new type of art that is created in this interaction with computer and with coding. People who really have also the technical as well, the artistic capability, have been totally overseen outside of, you know, small niches like Ars Electronica. I mean, of course, we had exhibitions of these artists in the 80s already, some of the old pioneers and so on. But outside of this very small world, they were just not recognized. And the NFT hype has given them visibility. The NFT hype has created a huge community activity. A lot of power is coming together. And I think it's a very interesting way to show a completely different way of how to interact as an artist with your audiences. The problem, of course, is that the underlying technology, the blockchain technology, is such a bad technology. This is really terrible. And the more we, of course, now with the cryptocurrencies and with the NFTs, we are kind of cementing a very bad technology. This is like what happened with the cars. Already 100 years ago, people recognized that the combustion motor is a very bad idea, that burning oil in a motor to run a car is, on the long run, a totally terrible idea and will destroy our environment. In the 1920s, people knew this already. But then people said, yeah, well, but in the future, the combustion motor will become more efficient and all the problem with energy and pollution will go away. But of course, the engine got more efficient, but more and more people were using it. And it took us 100 years to finally understand that maybe something like hydrogen or electric battery-driven cars are a much better way to deal with mobility than the combustion motor. And this is happening now with blockchain. Instead of saying, okay, we need something like blockchains, but we need it on a better basis. We need it redeveloped from scratch, because it was never developed to be the leading worldwide, so the underlying technology for all these things. That's why it's so energy inefficient and all these kind of things. So I think we have to be very careful to not set a standard that we cannot get away from it. And again, I think if you're an artist, if you're selling your stuff on NFT platforms, you could say, okay, this is not my concern. I just want to make art and want to sell it. But I think art, being an artist, means to be a critical member of society. Artists have a higher ethical and moral standard than others. This is my opinion. So if you work, whatever technology you engage as an artist, you need to make sure that you really critically analyze what you are doing, what's behind it. And I think this is probably some really difficult thing here with NFTs. Nevertheless, we see many artists who are trying to do this. We see some platforms that are not using Ethereum, but that are using blockchains that are not proof of work, but proof of stake. So they are more energy efficient. So I think as long as people understand what they are doing, it's totally fine. But don't expect to be this the fountain of money and wealth forever. I think it's also a lot of it is a hype that will fade away. And yeah.
Okay, so let's check the Julian Mock's question.
Remove self from the art creation. Do you have any advice? Well, I think this is not what I meant to say if this was coming like this. This new technology is absolutely not there to remove ourselves from creation. And even if at some point artists are working with this, it's for them, it's a very interesting experiment. I mean, there are artists out there now who really became quite famous by creating kind of programs and systems that are creating art on their own, and then it's community curated. So there's this Botto project from Mario Klingemann, for example. But he is not doing this because he wants to get rid of himself, of the artist. He's doing this to address the question of what is my role in art. And I think this is the really interesting point. When you work as an artist, engage with AI systems, try it out, see how far you can go. See how long it takes until you get bored by the response of the computer. Probably bored not because the response, what the computer is delivering or the AI system is delivering is not good enough. But at a certain point, you will recognize, well, if I'm not engaged, it's not fun anymore. And I think it helps you. It's a very interesting experience to consider or to understand what is your position as an artist. And we might need some redefinitions. The very simple old definition, the art is the one who is kind of moving the brush on the canvas. I mean, this is last century. We know already. I mean, we had all these things of conceptual art in the last century. We have so much experience with computer generative art and things like this. So AI systems are just the next iteration, even if it's a very powerful, and even if it bears the possibility to get rid of ourselves. But then the moment when we get rid of ourselves, I mean, this is like when you go to a party and you are in a bad mood and you don't interact with the people. You recognize very soon that just sitting like this in the corner is not really fun. So you have two decisions or two possibilities to decide. When you're like this, either you go and leave the party or you open up and you engage. And probably you engage in a different quality because you have experienced what it means to be outside of something. And I think probably the most important question for an artist is anyway this question of what is my role? What the hell am I doing? Why am I not working in a bank or in a lawyer's office making a lot of money? Why am I sitting here in front of my computer or my instrument and spending the whole day trying to rehearse some difficult piece on the piano or on the violin, or trying to write a new algorithm to make a better graphics or whatsoever? So I think use it as a challenge, not to get rid of yourself, but to question yourself and to train yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are a bit overrun, so thank you very much. So I will have another chance to talk with you again. Anyway, it's time to finish the talk. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeffrey and Terence. And once again to our participants as well. We hope to see you again in our forthcoming lectures tomorrow and coming Thursday on digital fashion and metaverse. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.